What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the IGN Movies Podcast, Keeping It Real. Chris Carl, Terry Schwartz, Jim Faveda. Boy, we have a few things to talk about this weekend.
Oh, yes.
In the old IGN Movies Podcast. Apparently a big trailer dropped this week.
Nah.
I didn't watch it.
Nah, it was boring as a dog's ass.
Yeah, no one really cared about that
Yeah,
one. What was it called? The Force Sleeps?
Yeah, seriously, what's
So
up
good.
with that, Star Wars? No, we obviously love the trailer, so we're going to talk about our reactions to the trailer and a few specific questions we have about it. Terry, let's start with you. What'd you think of the trailer?
It's funny, we've recorded a couple,
Tell me again what you thought of the
a couple
trailer.
videos about this. I watched the game, which first of all is a sign that I was very invested in it. And the moment where Rey says her line about, we've heard stories about what happens, just was like, that's when it got me, and I sort of had tears in my eyes for the rest of it. And then it came up online, I Chromecasted it, I watched it again, I watched it yesterday. Like, it has this sense of Marvel that is really exciting for me. And I love that it was so focused on triggering an emotional response instead of giving away the entire story, which I think this marketing for this movie has done an incredible job with, and something I really respect. I mean, we are people who want to pick apart every small bit of detail about a movie, but to have something that is like safe and going to be fresh when we go in is really exciting.
And yet we have picked it apart. We're going to continue,
do
so don't
That's
worry.
A perfect setup.
A little bit more. When did you get your ticket?
I did, yeah. I already had a friend who was in charge of getting the opening night ticket, and then we got ArcLight Dome
It's a lot
tickets.
of pressure on your friend, though, right?
Well,
What if
no,
you
the
blow
pressure.
it? Now everyone hates you.
Now I'm getting like really deep into my personal plans for this, but his work was purchasing a set packet of them, which we should have done next time. Next time, Episode 8. But yeah, and then I got my Friday ticket, and then we'll see. I really want to go to the iPic, which is this theater chain that serves like food and drinks at your comfy reclining chairs. But
they're opening an Alamo Draft House in San Francisco, and so they're
everyone up there.
I guess they just like everybody was shutting down their systems right when this trailer came out, like people trying to pre-order. So funnily enough, I was in, as you guys know, but probably the listeners don't, I was in the process of moving during this whole thing, and I was like super like head down doing that, was not thinking to buy my tickets, and then finally I got an email from the ArcLight, and I was like, there's no way there's tickets left. But why would they send me an email? And so then I went online immediately after I saw that email, and I was like, I'm going to go scope out what's there. And there were surprisingly a lot of tickets available for the late shows on Thursdays.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
What time did you go on the website? Because it was so slow. Those websites, I mean, they had huge amounts of
Sometimes it's easier
sales,
just to go in person to the theater and just buy
I would
it.
say that's a pro tip, too, for people who are trying to get these things. Go in person to the theater that you're planning to get. Yeah. You can also talk to somebody about getting stuff that's maybe left over. It's possible. It's better to work it that way than try to do it online, because online you can't negotiate.
So what'd you think of the trailer, though?
So I love the trailer. I mean, I agree, and I've said this for a long time. I'm really happy that we do have to keep it to speculation, because we don't know that much, really. I mean, we don't know simple things, like we don't know what the relationships are, what the families are involved in this.
We don't really know what the plot is.
We don't know what the plot is exactly. I mean, we've all sort of like been over and over and over what the plot is, what we think it is. But and I think we're probably somewhat right, but who knows? Maybe not.
Yeah, I enjoyed the trailer a lot. At this point, though, I just want to see the movie.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, each trailer has been fantastic. Each one give me a bit more of the feels. But at this point, I just want to see the movie. I know there'll be TV spots with some probably brief new footage that we'll of course pick apart. But at this point, I really just want to see the movie. I'm almost getting to the point where the obsession over it has become so manic that it's beginning to kill the enthusiasm for me personally a little bit. Like, yeah, I'm just like, okay,
Which
I just want to see the movie.
Which of course we are feeding into in doing this.
I'm my own worst enemy.
But I know, but I think I'm personally trying to temper my own not expectations, but just how much I am reading into all
Right.
these things. And so we're talking about how, there are some big questions that have come out of it, like where is Luke? And a lot of speculation about that because his absence makes him the biggest mystery. But some of the nitty gritty things that, I'm seeing people even write about in the comments, I'm like, I didn't even know that, and I was okay with not knowing these plot details. Like, you can dig as far into the story as you want, but I'm okay with sort of just taking what is presented and absorbing it and moving on.
Let's talk about something you just mentioned. Where is Luke Skywalker in Star Wars: The Force Awakens? He's been noticeably absent from the trailers. Yes, we think that's him with the hood touching R2. We heard voiceover that was largely from Return of the Jedi with maybe one tweaked line, but where's Luke Skywalker? What's going on? What do you guys think?
So many possibilities on what he could be doing. I think he's going to be in some kind of a mentor role. I think he's going to, or my actual like going theory, my personal theory is that he's eventually going to be a mentor, but in this movie, he's going to be like the Obi-Wan Yoda figure. He's off someplace on his own.
A hermit, basically.
Yeah, kind of a hermit, kind of like off doing his own thing. And I think R2's with him, like, but I don't know where C-3PO is. But so those guys might be split up. That's my guess. But other people have said, and there's that J.J. Abrams video that backs it up, that he could have gone to the dark side, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the big mystery people are sort of leaning into. Like, has Luke gone to the dark side? Is that why his presence is being kept a secret? We don't see him on the trailer or on the poster. We don't necessarily see him in the trailer. We don't know if that's actually him. And then he got second billing on the poster as well, which is something we noticed. Harrison Ford, who plays Han Solo, obviously, is top billing. Yeah. But to me, what that says, and I think this is sort of going along with your mentor role. I don't, maybe he is of the dark side, maybe he is going to be a mentor for these characters, but I think I'm expecting maybe there's a quest to find Luke in this episode in this movie, or he's someone who just really comes into it in the third act of the movie. And I could see this being Han Solo's movie and him playing the biggest role, and then Luke maybe playing a bigger role in future movies, and that's why we see him get second billing, and that's why he has largely been absent.
I have a theory that's just formulating in my brain. So this might be complete crap, or maybe I'm onto something. The Empire's not gone. They're just been pushed off to the outer rim, right? So, and then we know of these Knights of Ren, and we know that Luke, there's some rumors that, that Skellig Michael, the little rocky island in Ireland where they've been filming, is supposed to double as sort of like Luke's hideaway. That's a rumor. But it sounds right because I believe he's been on the shoot, according to press reports. And we saw the Knights of Ren in the latest trailer, a group of them. And I think they're in like the rain or something. All right, so here's my theory. What if Luke, knowing that the Empire is still out there, knowing that the rebellion now has to be able to govern, knows that we're going to need some real badasses to finally put the Empire out of order. Out of order, first order. But so he starts these Knights of Ren, thinking like, okay, you have to be tougher, badder, than I was, but it gets out of control. And so now what started as good intentions of like, I'm going to create this little order of this little group of badass Jedis to go and maybe take out these guys. What if one of them looks at the Empire and is like, they're actually onto something, or like, your dad was a great man, or whatever, And so he created this thing that ends up biting him in the ass, and now he has to go and stop it.
Well, one interesting thing, there's a totally interesting theory. One thing that I think is kind of crazy about this whole thing is like, we don't actually know what. Now I lost my train of thought.
We don't actually know
what Chris is talking about.
We don't actually know what I was going to say next.
If you know, let us know in the comments.
No, I really like that theory, and you could easily see that lending to the theory that Kylo Ren is somehow related to the Skywalkers, either Han and Leia's son, or maybe Luke's son, or something like that, that he could be this protege, this Padawan. Yeah, I really like that theory, and I think that could add some interesting
because it adds into some of the political stuff that the Star Wars, the prequels touched on too, like the idea that the Empire rose out of sort of the weakness of their own political system, and that they were able to rule for so long. And so I'm just wondering, like, the Knights of Ren, I mean, you put knights in something, that connotes nobility, something good, you know?
Yeah.
So, but if they started off as something good and it went bad, and the dark side, like, you just couldn't straddle that line the way Luke had to.
Yeah.
Where, you know, Luke didn't really get badass until he did kind of sidle up to the dark side. You know, you have to know temptation in order to resist it, you know?
Yeah.
And that was what that J.J. Abrams conversation that that Chris had mentioned earlier was about, which was this 10-year-old?
Yeah, it's like 2005 episode of Dinner for Five. It used to be the
missed that
Favreau show, and then Kevin Smith hosted this one.
And Kevin Smith was talking with Mark Hamill about how
There was Mark Hamill, J.J. Abrams, Stan Lee, and Jason Lee all sitting at a table.
No small group of nerds. But yeah, so Mark Hamill said that for Return of the Jedi, he initially had pitched to George Lucas to make Luke go to the dark side, but they determined that it was, you know, too dark of a turn for him. But then maybe JJ got some ideas from that when he wanted to have. Luke
It's a fascinating thing. I mean, just the fact that these two guys, 10 years before they would make this movie, are just happen to be sitting around together on camera talking about, hey, what would have, you know, ideas about Luke Skywalker. It's a great little
And your
fun.
theory also, you know, in the trailer we hear Kylo Ren say, "I will finish what you started," and that said while he's looking at this sort of mangled, burned Darth Vader helmet. But what if he's actually talking to Luke?
Yeah.
Yeah, even it's in the cut, so we don't know if he's talking to Vader or not. So my point I was going to make earlier is I don't, at least, maybe this has been explored in fiction, but I don't have a sense of whether the galaxy died with just one other witness, right?
Yeah.
Mace Windu, handful of people there when he died.
Well, I mean, they found him on the
Emperor
sidewalk.
That's true. There's that, yeah. But I mean, think about it. Like,
I
all
think the
these,
guy whose windshield he splattered all over.
all these scenarios are just a couple people's, like, telling of that.
Yeah.
So
really, it was only the Emperor's order of the destruction of the Jedi that would have been widespread enough that people would know. But then they would think that all
There are
Jedi
more
were
witnesses to
wiped
the
out.
OK Corral than there.
yeah,
than
right.
most
Like,
of
so
these,
all these deaths in the Star Wars universe are really subject to interpretation, and
It's fascinating when you think about it, you know?
Yeah.
We want to know what you guys think. Do you think Luke Skywalker went to the dark side? What do you think of my theory? And, you know, if he didn't go to the dark side, do you think he still could? So let us know in the comments. Chris, you look like you have a thought. You're poised.
Well, I wanted to talk about who else might be Darkseid.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
well, let's do this.
You know, obviously there's speculation about Luke. I don't think it's the truth. I think it would also ruin Star Wars a little bit,
man. You know.
But
that's why I like your theory that sort of would be that Luke's gem of an idea that would try to make things better actually does produce this darkness in other people.
So is Kylo Ren?
Welcome.
Is Kylo Ren truly Darkseid? They're framing him as a villain, but is there a switcheroo?
What if he's basically like a sleeper agent, like a undercover? But then why fight Finn?
I think that this movie is going to be him really coming into his own. We see, again, going back to that poster, reading too much into something that might not be that much to read into. But he's the biggest face on that poster. And so I think that a lot of this movie is going to be his sort of evolution, because we find out he's sort of a homegrown Sith. If he's probably not even technically a Sith yet. He made his own
some Force
lightsaber
stuff going on. That
yeah, I mean, I think he has the power, but
he
he hasn't been trained, right? That's a Jedi has been trained. Someone of the Force who's been trained. Right. But I think that we're really going to see him, start off as someone who's maybe in the middle and end up on either side. It would be a very big bait and switch for him to not be Sith, but maybe by the end he gets a redemption arc that's similar to Vader's. I
think maybe not in this movie, but yeah, maybe ultimately he does get that. But who else could be Darkseid?
I have one. I think that Poe Dameron could be the sleeper agent, honestly, because we see that scene where he's sort of either he's being tortured by Kylo Ren, or there's a speculation that the Starkiller base has destroyed Poe Dameron's world, and that's what he's witnessing. But either way, he's clearly not in a good state, and I just wonder if whatever is happening with Kylo Ren, he ends up being turned to the dark side, or maybe even is an unwitting pawn. And then another theory is that Finn rescues him from wherever they're being held, and that's when they get sent to Earth, and maybe that adds this Earth, Jakku, and maybe that's why he also has been minimalized in the marketing, that he could have this darker, more sinister world.
Let's say I was on Mars, and the Martians were like, "Hey, I'm gonna blow up Earth. Cool, all the people you love and know are on Earth. I'm gonna blow it up." I don't think I'd turn and be like, well, if you can't beat him, join him.
No, but that's what I mean. I think he's like maybe he's just been manipulated to the point.
But you don't think he went consciously dark
No,
side.
I think that he is somehow connected to the dark side, and maybe that moment, that destruction or torture or whatever, happened later in the movie and isn't necessarily.
But the dark side too. Yeah. You can get pulled to it, as they told us over and over, thank you, Yoda, that anger leads to everything leads to the dark side, apparently. Hate, anger, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
sex.
Premarital
sex. I mean, that's the implication
of the prequel. To the dark side.
Luke, Obi-Wan, they're living in caves, people. Come on, maybe if you were out there, I'm just saying Han Solo, nobody's talking about him going to the dark side, and we all know why. But, what if it is something as simple as just his anger at what happened pushes him further and further to just, making bad moral choices out of hurt and anger.
There's some imagery, like I think you were saying there's I don't know when we were talking about this or not, but all the imagery in the poster matters, right? The fact that Poe Dameron is wearing black in this movie could be as simple as like, hey guys, white hats, black hats, or it could just be a total red herring,
Yeah, I mean, the bad guys wear white. The stormtroopers are all in white.
All right, there goes.
Kylo
Luke
Ren's
Skywalker wore black.
Wore black. I mean, Han Solo mostly black outfit.
Okay, forget me.
I'm just saying.
Listen, we don't want to get into the black and white discussion here.
It looks cool. I mean, that's why it looks good. It photographs well. So I'm just saying.
You look good. You feel good.
Look, I'm just saying these guys have their own aesthetic choices they make too. Captain Phasma, she's like, I want to be badass. I want to look like a giant nickel. And you're going to like it.
You heard my Poe Dameron theory, but who do you think? Who do you guys think is also in the dark side?
In all seriousness, I'm curious about a character like Maz Kanata. It's Maz, right? Not Naz. Maz Kanata. Because if she's like a pirate and sort of like, is she or isn't she a bad guy kind of thing, like,
She seems to know a lot
I
about
would
this
put
whole
her in the
situation.
Lando
you know?
Calrissian camp, where it's kind of like, hey, I'm a player in this universe, but I'm not like
Right.
one of the main
Or
players.
even like Jabba, and someone who's so outside the realm of, but someone who's so outside the main, you know,
Right.
good versus evil battle that they have their
That
Well,
guy
I
was just
mean-
good versus evil versus sleazy.
Yeah, he seriously, literally was a slime.
Pizza the Hut. He ate himself to death.
Oh man.
But Rey, you know, like I think that we can seriously consider whether or not Rey goes to the dark side.
Hell no.
The matching up of her and Kylo Ren, her staff and his saber, and just sort of maybe they are just twins, like basically this universe's answer to Jaina and Jason Solo. But what if, you know, we see her lose her stuff? What if she goes over?
Well, I think that she might be on a parallel journey to him, and that might be what that is symbolizing.
And it pits her ultimately against Finn.
I think she's on a parallel journey to Luke. You know, like Luke's story in the first, episodes 4 to 6 is going to be like her story will be kind of like a template of that, I think.
Right.
Or
You don't
follow
think that would be
template, I
too
should
much
say.
retreading?
I feel like they're already
I think
doing
it's
a lot
going
of
to.
retreading.
I think it is. I think like consciously, those guys sat down in their story meeting when this whole thing started, and they said, "What worked, and let's get back to that." And they're like, the trio of characters
Hero's
worked, and this
journey.
hero's journey worked.
I mean,
and
even the planets, a
they
desert
dusted
planet,
off
an
each other's
ice
cannibal.
planet, a Death Star,
They're doing it all
and
in
a
one
forest
movie,
planet.
yeah.
You know, it's all the same things. Yeah.
They started thinking about me like when I was like a 10-year-old kid. I was like, well, snow troopers are cool, but what about flame troopers? That's the kind of stuff I would do.
A snow trooper with a flamethrower.
Where's the electrical trooper I need? You know?
Collect them all.
Well, what do you? Any final thoughts on who we think might go to the dark side?
Oh,
We've
and
kicked
Captain
her-
Phasma, obviously.
Oh.
I want her to be all bad. I know I've said that
yeah,
before.
she better not have any redemption.
Okay,
I
so
want her to
here's
be.
also another important distinction. You can be Empire and not Dark Side, I would say.
Right.
You could just be like
Which
in
is Finn,
like
it looks like.
Yeah,
I think
that-
General Hux is an example of that,
Yeah.
where he's like Grand Moff Tarkin or any of those. Basically, the what is the banality of evil? Sort of like you're just this soulless bureaucrat, basically, who just like the Adolf Eichmanns and stuff.
But
of
you know
the
what? He
Empire.
probably has a hobby, you know? He probably goes home and waters his plants and
I
pets
will watch
his
that
dog.
web
and-
series of General Hux petting his dog.
I keep bringing this up, and I'm sorry, Jim, but like Jim's nickname for Tarkin was the Death Star Diddler, which happened before you came out.
He's
You're
just
talking
creepy
about creep-
looking. And I heard Peter Cushing was a lovely, lovely man.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's always the guys who look scariest are actually the nicest guys.
Yeah, and the opposite.
Yeah.
The nice guys. Watch out
Yeah.
for those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch those.
Well, we want to know, what do you guys think? Who else goes to the dark side in this, not only in this movie, but maybe in this entire new trilogy? Let us know. Do we have anything further we want to talk about Poe? I feel like we've kind of covered it.
I mean, the Poe Dameron thing, I think the only other thing kind of to talk about with him is he even a big part of this film? You know,
Yeah.
like, is he, what is his character template going to be? When we first saw him, we were like, oh, he's kind of maybe Han Solo-ish.
Yeah, they said
Yeah.
he's the badass, or how did Oscar Isaac describe himself? Like the most badass pilot in the galaxy or
Yeah,
something?
yeah. And, I mean, I think that comment alone probably makes me think he isn't evil. You know, like,
Yeah.
I don't think,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, that's maybe reading way too
But it's like,
way
it'd be
much
like
into a
reading
comment.
into thinking Han goes to the dark side because we saw him in Cloud City getting put on the pin machine thing.
Yeah.
You know?
But the size on the poster is really downplayed. You know, like, we've seen him in clips, but we haven't seen that much of him, though.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's interesting that this marketing is so secretive that it's the things that we aren't shown that we thus read a lot more into. And so, I mean, it could be that they want to lean more on Finn and Rey in terms of marketing, but you'd think that a super cool fighter pilot would sell a lot of toys and that they
Right.
would want to lean into it. So I'm intrigued that he's a mystery because I didn't expect that he would be.
And, a lot of people have said that the stuff we've seen in the trailer is probably mostly first act, and it's maybe true. I mean, there's obviously some big
I think you get
battle
up
stuff
to
going on.
about the 45-minute mark, and I was even spitballing this morning. I bet you when they start doing press for this movie, they're only going to show the press like the first 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Kind of like they've done that of all things with the Saw movies. They would show you everything except like the last 10 minutes. But you know, early on for The Martian, they did end up screening it in its entirety for the press. But in their initial press stuff, they only showed us the first hour, and that was enough. It told you enough of what you needed to know. It whet your appetite for more, and it maintained whatever secrets that the movie wanted to maintain. Disney, please don't do that. I want to see the whole thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens and they want to maintain as much secrecy about characters' fates until opening weekend.
This movie is so special and different than most stuff that we're faced with. That you know, it might break all the rules, you know, and we might all be watching it at the same time, so nobody can spoil anything.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's move on from Star Wars. I know it's tough to let go. But hey, I'm going to replace it with something nice.
Okay, good.
Ooh.
Marvel.
Moon Knight.
Oh yeah, I accept.
Well,
I accept.
you know, there are rumors about Moon Knight maybe
I know.
getting his own Netflix.
We were talking about that yesterday.
Well,
I
wear the
assumed
shirt.
that inspired you.
I know. We were talking about Moon Knight yesterday, and so I was like, I'm gonna wear my
Every day's a
Moon
Moon Knight
shirt.
day, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna represent. I also have a. Oh, people have seen it on this show before. I also have a Good Night Moon Knight shirt.
Oh
too.
yeah, you wore that recently.
It's like Good Night Moon.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp, the planned sequel for the this summer's surprise hit movie. So Peyton Reed is reportedly in negotiations to come back. I don't think that's surprising.
Yeah.
Good
He did a
call,
good
bring him
job,
back,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
He did a good job, and I think there are certain directors that Marvel has worked with that are malleable enough that they can adapt to the ever-expanding Marvel universe. Peyton seems to be one of them. Obviously, Lord and Miller were
No.
not Lord and Miller, the Russo brothers.
Oh, the Russo brothers,
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry, too many pairs of directors working. But yeah, I think it does not surprise me, especially given how long he has wanted to work with Feige, that they would bring him back for more.
Yeah, Peyton Reed, I can take orders. Basically, it's like what I read into that is like, I you know, can work in a system.
I think that's you know, that's how movies were always made up to a certain point, and it wasn't until like auteurs came in that became the thing that you wanted to aspire to in film school or whatever. But I think there's actually something to be said for somebody who can come in and make a respectable movie and deal with all the pieces that you have to deal with.
Plenty of producers. I mean, David O. Selznick did that. I mean, Gone with the Wind went through what, 4 directors, and you know, Daryl Zanuck and all these guys who were either producers or studio bosses were very hands-on. And Feige is basically just the 21st century version of what guys in the 40s and 50s were doing, you know?
And you know what? I think it works. So, you know, keep doing it. And you could see where there were pain points. You know, like it or not, the Edgar Wright thing was clearly a pain point for both parties. Like, Marvel didn't like what was going on. Edgar Wright didn't like. They couldn't meet in the middle. And Peyton Reed came in and he's like, I can do that job, you know, and I'm going to. Another guy that's interesting
It's falling in love with the rebound that you said you weren't going to fall in love with. That's what I'm saying.
Another thing that's interesting about that situation is Adam McKay was also interviewing for that Ant-Man job, and he's a huge Marvel fan. So down the line, we might get an Adam McKay Marvel movie too.
I mean, he did write.
He did the big rewrite with Paul Rudd on that movie,
exactly.
So,
so but getting to direct one, I think, is.
I would be really surprised if he didn't get one of these movies that's coming up.
And it's maybe something a little lighter, you know, his heart is in comedy, and
he'd be great to do like one of the Spider-Man movies.
I'd love to see him do Howard the Duck.
That would be
That'd
great.
Be amazing. Like get an actually good Howard the Duck movie.
I watched that again like last weekend. It's on HBO Go, and my mom took me to see Howard the Duck when I was a kid, and it was. We didn't laugh. I think we made it 10 minutes in the movie before she pulled me out, because there's the duck breasts, there's all the implied duck-human sex, and I, you know, all she knew was, oh, it's a Marvel comic, oh, it's a talking duck, oh, George Lucas made it. It had checked all the boxes, like this is kid-friendly, and then like I'm watching it, and you know, he's reading Play Duck, and I think I was joking with online with like Goldman and Kalura about like how if they do Howard the Duck now, Play Duck will have no nudity. So
That's true. I mean, there'll be duck boobs, but they'll be covered.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be tasteful this time.
Tasteful duck boobs.
Let's talk about. I hear that's on the menu at La Hall.
Oh, they're playing at the Roxy this week.
Oh no.
Let's talk about Captain America: Civil War. Daniel Bruhl, who plays Baron Zemo, says that he's not wearing the character's iconic purple mask. You know what I say to that? I'm out.
You're done. That's the deal breaker.
Come
with
on,
Civil
Baron
War.
Zemo. That's his thing, man. He's got the purple mask.
You don't think he'll get it at least at one point?
There is no way. I will say this on the record. There is no way in hell to make that thing look good.
What, a purple sack over a guy's head with a little
They just walk
crown?
away from it. They're like, we aren't going to be able to do this.
There is seriously no way to make a purple sack over your face look good. And I even question why it was there in the first place. I mean, I know it was an adhesive X or something, like, lodged it to his face, but come on, people. What was that costume, honestly?
One other little Marvel tidbit. Rumor has it Rachel McAdams in Doctor Strange is playing a character from Night Nurse named Christine Palmer. And Terry, you can speak a little bit to why this explains sort of the use of Rosario Dawson's character, Claire Temple, and Daredevil and all that.
Yeah, she essentially was a night nurse, but they didn't use the name night nurse. And what we found out later is that that's because Marvel had plans for that name. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were saving night nurse, the character, the name, the identity, for something big like Doctor Strange.
And like, she won't be the primary night nurse character of Linda Carter, which cracks me up because it's Wonder Woman actress Linda Carter. But like in the, I think it was Doctor Strange: The Oath. It was one of the 21st century storylines. She and Doctor Strange actually were an item, and it would make sense too that, you know, if Christine Palmer, that night nurse character, is indeed Rachel McAdams' character, she is an OR nurse or a surgeon's assistant. So it makes sense that she would work directly with Stephen Strange back when he was a dick doctor. I mean, not a doctor of dicks, but a doctor who was
Though
a
I
dick.
would love to see that movie. That Benedict Cumberbatch starring Doctor Strange Dick Doctor movie.
It's something Adam McKay could direct.
Yeah, that'll be the sequel.
Doctor Strange, Dick Doctor.
Well, I am strange. I do.
I was going to take it to the place of, like, what would it like to be dating Doctor Strange, but now that we got on this talk, I don't even know what to say.
You can't really top Dick Doctor.
No.
Should we move on to Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice?
The only natural.
The only way.
Perfect segue.
The Dawn of Justice.
All right.
Come on, it's not the first time I've made that joke, people.
Yeah, I'm sure it's already been copyrighted for some porn parody.
That's true. That's done already. They shot it.
Reportedly, the movie has a budget of upwards of $410 million, which would make it the most expensive movie this side of Pirates on Stranger Tides.
I could retire now with that money and like never have to work again for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
I'll take a cut of that. Like, can everyone get a cut of that? If we pass that out to everyone who lived in the United States, we'd all be set.
But I would rather have seen Dawn of Justice than have $410 million. I'm just kidding.
Are you sure?
But
what do you take away from that, Jim?
Well, let's look at it this way. It started filming in late 2013.
Yeah.
Or no, late 2013. It started filming.
It did.
And it comes out in March 2016. It kind of sounds about right between all the visual effects, overtime, the long ass shoot, salaries. I'm sure Ben Affleck didn't come cheap. Yeah, that adds up after a while. And then plus P&A on this thing, which hasn't even ramped up yet.
Oh, well, that's not even counted in the budget.
That's not even,
so, like, that's going to be another
So
thing.
that means this movie has to hit $1 billion just to break even.
I mean, it will, and then some. And so, like, I think there's a new economics for movies.
There's no doubt in your mind that it might not hit $1 billion.
Absolutely
what if it's really long?
It'll hit $1 billion.
Okay.
People will still come because they're curious.
Yeah, I mean it's going to hit all the territories, and it's going to do well internationally. Superman does well internationally. Batman does well internationally. Like, both of those together, opposed to each other, I think it's just going to, it's going to print money. So,
but whether it's good or not, I think, is the question. Like, pouring that much money into something is a warning sign for me, because it means that you have to keep keep spending to make sure that what you're getting out is quality. And I mean, that's a really
Right.
long shoot. And that's not even necessarily to say that it's not good or great already, but Warner Brothers is hinging its entire cinematic universe on this one movie. And so they really have to stick the landing to convince everyone that everything they've planned through 2020 is going to be worth the investment.
There are billions at stake. But the same chatter was happening around Avatar, remember? And everybody was like, it's going to bankrupt Fox if it doesn't work and all this stuff. And it's just like, but it just happened to be the #1 movie of all time. And, you know, I think they're going to get it right enough to make $1 billion and make their money back and all that stuff. They've already got the slate out in front of them. It's not like they're going to back off of their whole slate. Unless this thing, I mean, if it made like $100 million, then they'd be like, well, maybe all canceled.
Yeah.
But it's not
I
going
would
to.
see, I don't think everything on that DC slate is for sure. I mean,
I agree.
I think, you know, even Aquaman, I think, is, even though it's got James Wan and everything, if they start looking at, like, the story and it's just not coming together,
I mean, they've really front-loaded this stuff, too, with Batman v Superman, which is a big, you know, climactic,
they went right to their Civil War. They skipped over the setup stuff.
And then, and then they have Justice League
exception of
coming
Man of Steel.
fairly soon after that, and Suicide Squad, too. I mean, you have Batman, Superman, Joker, all of them together,
Right.
you know, whether Joker and Suicide Squad is in Justice League or not. And then you have all the lesser-known characters coming after that, which is sort of the inverse of the Marvel formula, where you introduce everyone, make people care about them, and then you build up from
It's
there.
an interesting time. We'll see if it actually works. I hope it does. We did say a few months ago we thought they had a great strategy, so I'm not going to backpedal now.
I agree. And I think one thing that can't happen is that they all can't cost $400 million. You know, like Aquaman cannot cost $400 million. It's got to be $200 million or less, because I think they're going to need all these movies to perform at a level to keep rolling. You know, and Marvel's doing that too. I would say, with the exception of Ant-Man, which is probably their lowest performer in a while, but also probably
it ended up doing pretty well with the China intake.
Yeah, and it's
really?
it's the 9th. The opening weekend was low, but it ended up being the 9th highest grossing movie of the year domestically, and then China now it did really well over there. Although
It did better than First Avenger, which, I mean...
Although I understand there's a movie, I think it's called like Goodbye Mr. Loser. It's a local Chinese movie that's just kicking ass over there, including, you know, beating
We'll have to
Ant-Man,
watch it and talk about it next
but
week.
I'm just like, I love the Goodbye Mr. Loser. You know?
I guarantee we would understand every cultural subtlety of Goodbye, Mr. Loser.
Let's talk about some other stuff in the time we have left. Fox is making another Die Hard movie, a sixth Die Hard. And this one, they're going to try and bring back Bruce Willis, but it sounds almost like a bookend thing, and it's going to be about young John McClane and how he kind of came to be. And I'm like, I don't care. It's called the first Die Hard movie. That was his origin story.
Yeah.
He was just a beat cop who was afraid to fly and had a crappy, you know, his marriage was falling apart, and this adventure changed his life. You know, that's it. I don't need to know anything else. Yes, and Christmas and Argyle. Yeah. So I don't need
and Twinkies.
I don't need anything else.
Is this the movie that's retreading previous material that is just one step too far for you?
No, the last one was one step too far. Like, I
Die
actually
Hard
liked the one previous to that. And
it's Len Wiseman, the same director of that one, Live Free or Die Hard, is doing it. But it's a bad idea. We don't need it, you know?
Yeah, I liked Live Free or Die Hard, but it was so far from the actual Die Hard formula that it didn't need to be called Die Hard. You know?
Yeah.
I'm fine that it was. I'm happy it was. I'm fine that it was. But like these last two, it's like, just don't.
Well, it's interesting because they were like trying to build up this mythology of John McClane, who he just needed the first Die Hard movie again to have that, and so they like brought in his family, and now they're like, let's go back to younger John McClane. I wonder if it's just like, can we get a new hot actor to like?
Yeah, I don't even know who do you get to be, you know, young Bruce Willis. I mean, we already had it was Looper. You know? Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I mean, they tried to do that with Jai Courtney as his son in the last one, and you know.
I feel like Jai Courtney has kind of been a non-starter, right? Like,
he's kind of like he's kind of like a Sam Worthington type for me.
Yeah.
Like you'll be that dude, perfectly serviceable in a very not too challenging role, but there's just not enough there. You know?
I think it's sort of like that generic action hero type where people are at the point where we've had so many of those, you want something that makes them a little more interesting, a little bit more.
He's the Australian Cole Hauser.
He's the thing that like Taylor Kitsch has broken
Die
out
Hard.
of now. Like I feel like Taylor Kitsch was starting to go down that road, and like it's kind of like even whatever you say about True Detective, like it or don't like it, I thought his performance in that actually will probably help him do different stuff down the line.
Let's talk about Gambit. 3 rumored contenders.
That's a good segue that you didn't even know you were going to make.
Hey! According to I don't know why I turned Jerry Lewis. Hey, lady!
You're welcome, French people listening.
Exactly. I now want a medal. That's what I want. Doug Liman from Bourne Identity and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and of course Edge of Tomorrow, is up for it according to Heroic Hollywood, as is Joe Cornish, Attack the Block. And here's one. Shane Black, Iron Man 3's Shane Black, Lethal Weapon writer Shane Black.
Wow, I bet a lot of people hate that idea.
I like that since the last time we talked about Gambit, we have no new actual information and just more rumors. Like they're just going to keep...
rumors. We're getting close to actually having actual
I hope so.
Right?
I mean, it could just be one of those ploys where they're keeping rumors in the press so that the public doesn't forget about it.
Maybe they're like... field testing some of these names.
Who do people get excited about?
I wouldn't be surprised. Because I had producers kind of broach that with me years ago of like floating like some names that were on their list of like, here's our show, like, and they just kind of want to see like what.
So what decision did you influence?
The original Daredevil movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Michael Clark Duncan.
Oh, okay.
And then Elektra, and I was not a fan of the idea of Jennifer Garner because she's so white bread, and I think it was her, Penelope Cruz, and Monica Bellucci were the ones that they were looking at. And then
Penelope Cruz might have been kind of interesting, but that would have been a really different channel. That would have been like a different,
very different
for her career.
I really liked Michael Clark Duncan.
Yeah, no, I thought
he was fun.
'Cause I think the other one was Vincent D'Onofrio.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, because I mean, basically, you just needed guys who
time.
would fit physically, and then there were some fans who wanted Brian Dennehy, but what I don't think people realize about Brian Dennehy is he's not that tall.
Yeah.
He's only like 5'10".
He can wear
but
heels
he's
like
a
Tom
big
Cruise.
dude, but he's just so I don't know how the hell did we get on this track. Let's talk about Crimson Peak. Now that movie did not perform last week at all. It's kind of dead on arrival.
Which we thought would happen, right?
Which is a shame because everyone loves Guillermo.
Yeah.
Right? And it ended up only making opened in 4th place domestically with just around 13 million, and then globally also kind of moot with 28.9. It cost 55 million, and we found out it might not be able to open in that very vital market of China. Why? Because China has very, now I sound like Trump, China has a no ghosts rule in there. Nothing that would promote anything that would seem occult-ish or supernatural.
Well,
unless it's from Chinese
How
mythology.
did they not know that going in? They had to know that going in, right?
I mean,
that's
Doctor
not like something
Strange,
you find out after
I
the
guess,
fact. Like, well, I guess we can't show it in this whole huge place. It's making us lots of money. Like,
yeah. Well, the only way you can get around
know.
it is if it turns out it's like a character hallucinating, or it was some Scooby-Doo way of getting around it.
Right.
But
here's how you do it. You
how
have
do
John McClane wake up at the end and be like, what a dream.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked before about how we're all big fans of Guillermo as an auteur, but I saw this movie over the weekend, and I just thought it was very shallow. I don't know. I didn't feel like we got into a lot of the character motivations. I thought that visually it was stunning, but like really, what was the importance of the machine that Tommy Hiddleston's character was so? Okay, well then I'm sorry that I'm asking you these questions.
I think that was just basically because if you could get that to work, then they could pull down all the big bucks and clay mining. and then he would get even more money.
Oh, perfect.
But it's
You know how money is awesome?
but no, for me, I feel like Crimson Peak's lack of finding its footing is the people who liked it loved it. Like I know Eric Goldman really loved it, and I think there are just certain, like in our own reviewer, Scott Calora gave it an 8.5, but I felt like it hit certain aesthetic beats that fans of certain genres, literary or filmic, really enjoyed, you know. But for me, I agree with you, Terry, in that it did feel shallow. I didn't feel connected to any of those characters. I'm not a big fan of Mia Wachowski.
Wasikowska?
Yeah, I'm
Wasikowska.
just not a big fan of hers. And also, this is probably the wrong time to admit that I had a dream the other day that Tom Hiddleston died.
No!
That,
Sorry.
That's a terrible. That's a nightmare.
That was a gut reaction.
I'm just saying,
It's a
I had that
national
dream and
nightmare.
I woke up and I'm like, did that really
So we were talking about sort of like generic action hero types, and I really like Charlie Hunnam. I think that he can have really good applications, but seeing this movie and just how charismatic and what presence Tom Hiddleston has, and then comparing that to Charlie Hunnam, who sort of had like
Dr. Wet Blanket?
Yeah, like he had a very wet blanket, like one note role where he's like, I'm a dentist, but I'm a detective. And like,
Yeah, no, he was an ophthalmologist who had some weird thing for Sherlock Holmes, and I'm like, they never paid it off. So sorry, we got into some spoilers there, but
he's really into. But anyway, so like, I just thought that Tom Hiddleston was the best part of this movie, and I did not. I read this from Jenny Miller, who's this great film writer, a freelance writer for a bunch of sites. Tweeted this. She said that when Guillermo del Toro takes off his human suit, 3 goth girls tumble out, and I just thought that was like the perfect encapsulation of this movie.
I kind of love that. I mean, to me,
that.
like the appeal of this movie is a return to kind of big, grand, spectacular gothic horror, right? And like,
but it's
a
not
lot of
even much of a horror. It's really gothic romance.
Yeah, but even then, the romance isn't that great.
Gothic horror was never that horrific, especially as we are looking at modern horror. But you know, one of the problems is that I think filmmakers, and not just Guillermo, but filmmakers in general, can fall in love with eras of filmmaking that just don't apply to now, and that was a problem that Tarantino had with Grindhouse a little bit. And if a studio backs that, then they are going to back that less if it does this, you know, too many times or maybe even once.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I didn't hate the movie as much as others, as my friend that I saw it with, she hated it. But I didn't feel anything for it. I don't feel like I'm ever going to think about the movie much again, sort of in the same which is a shame because it was visually beautiful, but just sort of there was no there. I felt the same way I did about like Pacific Rim. Like there's no human being to latch onto. There's an idea, there's a visual, there's a cool actor like Idris in Pacific Rim or Hiddleston in this one, but there's no, I don't care about anything that's going on. You know, I just want to give a plug to a bunch of reviews that we now have up on the site. The Spectre review is up. That's still better than Sam Smith's song.
Yay!
Oh, The Writing's on the Wall is just such a bland song, man. I know we talked about this
according to the
before.
review, it might be a little bit of a bland movie.
He gave it. He said it's good but unspectacular, which to me means it's that perfect middle era James Bond movie.
It's good but unspectacular.
He made it work.
That's you know what? If we still had the bell, I would have hit it just then.
Hit the damn bell for that one.
You saw Gem and the Holograms.
I did.
What'd you think?
Which it's not really a Gem and the Holograms movie, but you know, some of its strengths are that it takes sort of this interesting look and analysis of fame in the YouTube era, and you know the effect that those big YouTube stars that we're seeing become more and more significant can have on their audience. And I commented in the review about how it felt more of like a spiritual follow-up to John M. Chu's Never Say Never Justin Bieber documentary. And I don't even mean that necessarily in a negative way. I just mean it seemed like there were things that struck him about that experience that he thought could apply, especially visually in this movie. But I talked to him this morning in a review that will probably be, or an interview that will probably be up by the time this goes up. And he very much said that he felt like this was his superhero origin story, which I did not necessarily get from the movie.
And Jem begins.
Well, yeah, and then I think that he wants to be a bit more Jem in the from the cartoon.
That's like presuming a lot, though, right?
Well, I mean, he was like very quick to say that, you know, who knows if a sequel will ever happen, but that he didn't feel like he had earned telling the Jem from the cartoon story in this movie because it is a lot older in that target audience that would have already known.
I think you just go all in and you just do Spice World or.
Well, he actually, again, I'm giving away my entire interview right here, but he, 10 years ago, he started pitching that movie, this giant, like, Tokyo set, huge Jem and the Holograms movie, and then as it evolved, he decided to trim it back and turn it into what this became.
Now, that movie would have been truly outrageous.
Oh, God. He took it there.
And that, yeah.
And there's no way you can, there's no way we can top this. So
I want to ask, though, a couple of key things. I actually think this is like the stupidest movie to kick off this conversation, but like I think more movies need to start in media res, you know, like get it in the action. Yeah. These people have existed, tell a story about them, and then just like drop in hints.
Batman '89 did that. You know?
Just drop in hints about what made them that way, but don't like just make them be that
I think that's what people are getting to with Marvel. Like they're like, we're sick of origin stories. Just drop us into this world. Like there's no way that this character just now came out of nothing and could have had this really like capsule origin story with everything bananas that's been happening in this world. Yeah. So
I really, really hope for Civil War, looping back to that, I really hope for Civil War that we just get a sense of Spider-Man having existed for a while. And then when we finally get the Marvel Spider-Man movie, it does not have to tread that territory.
But I think I've mentioned this in a past podcast about here's how you can just recap Spidey's origin. They're just, you know, Peter Parker is, what, 15 years old? He's going to have a social media account, even before he's a superhero. Any kid who got bit by a spider on a field trip is totally going to put that crap on Instagram, everything. That's how you cover his origin. Hey, oh yeah, Peter, I saw you get bit by a spider, or, you know, sorry about your uncle, that kind of stuff. Just
I'm okay with them being like neighborhood superheroes too, because that's essentially what Daredevil is. And even though, you know, everything that came out of that first season was newsworthy, it still was like very much just in Hell's Kitchen. And so, you know, if Spider-Man has had some experiences saving people and, you know, these personal tragedies, but it wasn't to the scale of what we've seen in the movies, and that's fine. That's how you set it up, but he at least has been
Hey, look, Robin Hood, he's got Sherwood Forest. It's not like he's going all the way off to another part of England to go and fight bad guys.
Until they tried to make a movie
until Ridley Scott gets his hands on it.
Yeah, exactly. Also opening this weekend, Last Witch Hunter got a bad review from us. Surprise, surprise. Boy, that thing just looks like dog mess. In fact, that's an insult to dog mess. I'm surprised that a movie from the director of Sahara and the writer of Priest turned out to be bad.
Well, Sahara, come on. Sahara of those 3 films is actually decent.
Okay.
Right? Like watchable at least.
I like that that's the framing that we need for Sahara. Too. Like, it's those options. It's like,
look, you lost your big toe on your left foot.
Right.
Still got it
I guess I'm not willing to fight this war.
Rock the Casbah got kind of a pan from us as well, but it's getting panned by a lot of people, which is a bummer because everyone loves Bill Murray. And then Suffragette, though, got a good review from us. And then Attack on Titan Part 2, the live-action movie, got really bad review.
Yeah, our anime experts at IGN, Miranda and Callie, we're not crazy about those adaptations.
No, they sound awful. I have a screener for it, but I can't. And I watched the anime a bit. Interesting, but if I never saw it again, I wouldn't care.
It sounds like the one thing that the live-action movies really got right were the Titans, which like.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess if there was one thing you had to get rid of,
But just watch that, 5 minutes of.
Yeah, just like.
I just
put it
think
on
it's
you.
so weird that none of them have junk. That's all. Anyhow.
Okay, we're all about those dick doctors and dick types this episode.
Attack of the dick doctors.
Keep it here at Keeping It Real.
Well, I think I can't possibly top that, so we're gonna end it on that note. But let us know what movies you end up going to see this weekend. Any thoughts you had on anything we talked about in this week's podcast? Follow us on Twitter at Chris Carl, at Terry_Schwartz, at Jim Vavida. Check out some of our other podcasts like
Superhero Show.
Podcast shows, whatever, Superhero Show, Channel Surfing, Rebel Base, you name it, we got it here. All things movies. Keep it here on IGN.